not just something theoretical, but I see it happening every moment.
Yeah, I mean, people have to study it over and over, because otherwise, yeah, most people just think of some pie in the sky theory out there or something, you know. And that's how you appreciate the depth of the Buddhist teaching, you know, more and more as your understanding gets deeper. Okay, friends, I will go ahead and start with reciting Namo Tassa and the three refuges for those who like to join. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Well, welcome, friends, coming back to our sort of normal Wednesday night Sutta study class. And this week we are beginning to look at the Samanapala Sutta, or translated as the fruits of the monastic life, or the fruit of the ascetic life. And we'll discover what the meanings of this is. It's number 2 in the Digha Nikaya. And that attachment that I sent out, I'm not sure if people were able to read it, because I looked at it again today, and I opened that attachment, and it had all these other things on there, but not the sutta. So does anybody else have that problem? If they looked at the attachment I sent out, and if they found the sutta there or something else? Can I see people's little pictures?
I found the sutta there.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Anyway, so this number 2 in the Digha Nikaya, if you may or may not have had a chance to read it, the Digha Nikaya is not one of the popular books of the suttas, but anyway, this it's an interesting sutta, and it starts. The setting is this took place in Rajagaha or Rajgir, and at that time there was a certain king named Ajatasattu. And this king, just to give a little story on it, because it's an important part toward the ending, this king had actually plotted to have his father, who was the previous king, murdered because of his craving and desire to become king. And his father was a very righteous king. He was a very prominent supporter of the Buddha and the monks. And he also was very devoted to the Dhamma. And his son, this Ajatasattu. Apparently it wasn't so. And anyway, he had his father killed and took over the throne. So this king was, of course, he was remorseful of that because he knew his father was, a supporter of the Buddha. But anyway, this king on the full moon night, he was reflecting to himself, and I'm just going to read parts of this because it, I can't just describe it by myself as well as it is in the print. So this king, he was sitting out on his little balcony, I guess, looking up at the sky and the full moons on the full moon night, and he says, "Auspicious is this moonlight night. Can we not today visit some ascetic or Brahmin to visit whom would bring peace to our hearts?" So at that time, there was a lot of ascetics and Brahmins who were espousing teachings, various types of philosophies and teachings, many of them very contrary to the Buddha's teaching. Now, the Buddha was there too. So he was one of these ascetics and Brahmins that the king was referring to, but he was evidently talking to one or two of his ministers there and asking them, shouldn't we visit some ascetic or Brahmin on this night to hear some Dhamma that will bring peace to our minds and hearts? So then I'm not going to read all of this, but there was a list of about 6 of these ascetics that are mentioned over and over again in different suttas, who held various spurious types of viewpoints on the nature of the world, but most of them didn't really practice much meditation, and what they were talking about was, sometimes nonsense to anybody who knew anything deeper about, especially the Buddhist teaching. So anyway, this one of these ministers said, yes, there's this Purana Kassapa who has many followers, who's very well known, the founder of a sect, highly honored by the multitude. You may visit this Purana Kassapa, O king, and he may bring peace to your heart. And on hearing that, the king remained silent, because the king had visited all these other ascetics before. I guess it was just a way of getting eventually to the point with the Buddha, but just to kind of make a point. He said, yeah, I've listened to this Purana Kassapa before, and he was just talking all this strange stuff. And so the king, wasn't inclined to visit him. And then some other minister mentioned another one of these 6. And it went on down the line. Each time the king says, yeah, I've heard the spiel of these other ascetics. And they talk a bunch of malarkey and nonsense. And he wasn't interested. So finally, after all the ministers talked about these other 6 spurious ascetics, the Buddha's own physician, Jivaka, he had been silent this whole time. And then finally the king said to Jivaka, because he knew that Jivaka was the doctor of the Buddha. So he said, you friend Jivaka, why are you silent? And then Jivaka says, well, sir, there was this blessed Lord, the Arahant, the fully enlightened Buddha, staying in my own mango grove with a large company of 1,250 monks. And concerning this, report of the Buddha, his reputation was very flowering, and he's fully enlightened, endowed with wisdom and conduct, the teacher of gods and humans. And he may well bring peace to your Majesty's heart. And then and that was probably the cue. That was what this king had kind of been waiting for. I think the whole thing was kind of planned out that way, but just it makes an interesting introduction to the sutta, and just a way of getting to the point or highlighting why he chose the Buddha to go to over these other ones. So anyway, they had all the king's elephants mounted, and he brought all of his wives. He said 500 wives, each rode a different elephant. And they set out for this Jivaka's mango grove. I'm not going to go into all the details of it, because again, I hope that you can get the sutta and read it yourself, because it's better than I can, the written out part is better than I can just freely recount it. And so then actually when they get close to the monastery, it was very silent. And the king, they stopped all the elephants. And he said, you said there's 1,250 monks here. There should be a lot of noise going on with that many monks, And he's, are you deceiving me? Are you tricking me, Jiva? And he said, no, have no fear. I would not deceive you. Approach the pavilion. There was lights burning on in this pavilion. So he went up there and finally, knocked on the up to the door and went in and then addressed the Buddha. Or he went up to where the Buddha was and stood to one side. Then he asked the Buddha these questions. He said, Lord, I would ask something if you would be pleased to answer me. And he said, ask me anything you like, Your Majesty. And then he talks about his ordinary people. There's all these people that work for the king, right? There's elephant drivers, horse drivers, chariot fighters, scouts, officers, slaves, cooks, barbers, bathmen, bakers, garland makers, basket weavers, potters, calculators, accountants, and so many other skills, and the people earn their living by those skills. And they take care of their family, and they rear up their children, and they support the monks and the Brahmins, and doing good work, and creating merits for a happy reward in the future. And so he asked the Buddha, he says, Lord, can you point out such a visible reward here and now as the fruit of the homeless life? So the king was, saying, look at all these people enjoying, they have work, they gain a livelihood, they can, amuse themselves, they can have a good time. So, evidently that was only a certain part of the population he was talking about, I'm sure. But anyway, he was highlighting that these people work hard and they get the fruits of that hard work. And then he contrasts that to the monks that are seen just kind of sitting around the monasteries or walking on alms, collecting food. And, what are these fruits of the recluse life? He must be thinking, how could they be more than enjoying, all the sensory pleasures and families and having lots of grandchildren and nieces and nephews and attending birthday parties and all these other things, right? So the king is thinking, wow, that's the reward of, of living the lay life. And so he says, what's the reward of these ascetics, So then the Buddha, he already knew that the king had already visited all these other ascetics and so on. But he asked the king, well, what did these other ascetics, you asked all these other ascetics the same question, what did they tell you about the fruits of the homeless life for the people who are living under their guidance and teachings? And I'm not going to read it again, but he recounts all these spurious ideas and philosophies that these other monks were saying, and they were uncontrolled, and they were always talking loudly and horsing around and stuff like that. And they evaded his question. They wouldn't answer his question when he directly asked them, what are the benefits of leading this ascetic life under your teaching? And they didn't answer. They just went on in a tirade of, again, espousing these nonsensical philosophical ideas and arguments about there's no result of karma, and there's no good deeds, no bad deeds, there's no benefits of leading a holy life, there's no afterlife. I mean, there's so many different ideas. So anyway, finally, then he asked the Buddha about that. And so he asked the Buddha then this same question. And so he asked the Buddha, can you, Lord, point to such a reward visible here and now as the fruit of a homeless life? After all these other ascetics couldn't say anything about the benefits of living a holy life, the Buddha then tells them this in a simile. So he says, suppose there was a slave, you have a slave or a laborer who had to get up early in the morning and do a lot of work and goes to bed after you, but he willingly does whatever has to be done. They're well-mannered, pleasant-spoken. And then these slaves are kind of just laborers, menial laborers and so on. They're thinking, they've seen all these ascetics wandering around, and they say, what if I become an ascetic, And then what if these laborers and other common people decided they wanted to be a monk, or even slaves if you gave them their freedom. And so so suppose those laborers went and became monks and were going around, collecting alms and leading a good monk life. And then the king asked them, what would you think about these people now, these people that formerly worked for you and now they are, living as monks? Would you ask them to come back and work for you as a slave as before? And the king said, no, we would pay homage to them. We would rise and invite him and to receive robes and food and lodgings and make arrangements for their protection. And so the Buddha is like catching this king in his words. And so he says, well then, what do you think, sir? Is this not one fruit of the homeless life that's visible here and now? That formerly these people worked and toiled and slaved for you, and but now they're living a free monk life and getting alms from you, and you're bowing down and prostrating to them. Isn't that a fruit of the homeless life? And the king says, yes, certainly. That is the first such fruit of the homeless life. And then he says, can you show me any other reward visible here and now, the fruit of a homeless life? And the Buddha said, yes, I can. And then he goes on to say, well, suppose the farmers, the stewards in your temple and other people, who have regular jobs, not just laborers or slaves, but, people who held other higher kind of positions. And what if they also decided, "Hey, I think I'm going to become a monk. Look at these monks, they look like they're quite free and so on. So what if they also, left, the palace or left those jobs and became monks?" And so he gave the same reply. Yes, he wouldn't, pressure them to come back. He would honor them if they were living a good monk life. If he saw that now these people have become monks and they were living a good monk's life, and so on, that he would also pay homage to them and so on, and support them. And then the king says, yeah, I would do that, yeah. And so the Buddha says, then what do you think, sir? Is this not another fruit of the homeless life visible here and now? And the king replies, yes, Lord, that, sir, is the second such fruit of the homeless life. But then he goes on to ask the Buddha again, well, can you show me any other reward visible here and now as a fruit of the homeless life that is more excellent and perfect than these? And the Buddha says, yes, I can, sir. And then he goes on and he gives this little discourse that is mentioned in many other suttas too. It says, Your Majesty, it happens that a Buddha arises in the world, an Arahant, a fully enlightened Buddha, endowed with wisdom and conduct, knower of the worlds, incomparable trainer of persons to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, enlightened and blessed. Having realized by his own super knowledge, he proclaims the pure, holy life, lovely in its beginning, in its middle, and in the ending, in the spirit and the letter. And he displays the perfectly perfected and purified holy life. And then this Dhamma is heard by a householder. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically he means, so people hear the teachings of the Buddha, they get inspired by that, they become monks and even nuns, and decide to shave off their hair, put on the robe, and go forth into the homeless life. And they abandon all their property and cattle and horses and other things, money, great or small. They leave it to their relatives, and they, they go forth into the homeless life. And then after going forth, they dwell restrained by the rules. So they undertake the training rules of monks or nuns, and they devote their life to purifying the morality, with the sense doors guarded, skilled in mindfulness and awareness and contentment. So he says these people that then go forth a little bit more than the previous two groups that he mentioned. They purify their morality, they guard the doors of the senses, they become skilled in mindfulness and awareness, and they gain that perfect contentment. And then the king has, how is a monk perfected in morality? And then he goes on to describe how they, abandon the 5 unskillful actions: killing, lying, cheating, sexual misconduct, and they stop harming, any creatures. And because of this perfected morality, they see no danger from anybody owing to their restrained by morality. And this is a key point. The reason why so many people's minds are disturbed, they're disturbed because of guilt, worry, fear, anxiety of having done things they shouldn't have done, or not have done things that they should have done, or just their unsatiated desire for more and more sensual pleasures, and then getting angry and so on when somebody tries to block their sensory pleasures, and doing unskillful actions that people are looking for them, coming after them, and so on. So they have this fear and anxiety. And so one who is perfected in morality becomes free from, he sees no danger from anybody because he hasn't hurt anybody. And so he gives a little simile. He says, just as a duly anointed king, having conquered his enemies, by that very fact, he sees no danger from any side. So the monk, on account of his morality, sees no danger anywhere. He experiences in himself the blameless bliss that comes from maintaining this Aryan morality. In this way, sir, he is perfected in morality. And then he guards the sense doors. Here, a monk, on seeing a visible object with the eye or the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind, they do not grasp at the signs of beauty or the major signs or the secondary characteristics, because greed and sorrow and unskillful actions would overwhelm him if he dwells leaving the sense faculties unguarded. So he practices guarding the sense faculties, and he goes through all of them. And he develops restraint of the mind faculty. He experiences within himself the blameless bliss that comes from maintaining this Aryan guarding of the sense faculties. In this way, sir, a monk is a guardian of the sense doors. That means, of course, he's applying mindfulness and clear comprehension to whatever is coming through any of his senses. He's not allowing his mind to say, oh, look at that beautiful thing. Oh, that nice smelling food. That's not guarding the senses. So guarding the senses means like having a watchdog at each of the senses, saying, unskillful thoughts and inclinations are starting to arise because of these objects, and he lets them go. So that's the guardian, and that is done through mindfulness, of course, and clear comprehension. And then how is a monk accomplished in mindfulness and clear awareness? This means in all of their different movements, they act with clear awareness and going forward, backwards, to the side, looking in any direction, bending, stretching, wearing their robes, eating their food, even going to the toilet. They do so with full awareness, present moment centered awareness, and guarding their sense doors. In this way, a person is accomplished in mindfulness and clear awareness. And in doing that, they become contented. Here, the monk is satisfied with whatever robes he gets, whatever alms food he gets, whatever lodgings he gets. Just as a bird with wings flies here and there wherever it wants, unburdened by nothing but its wings, so is the monk satisfied. In this way, a monk is contented. Then because of that, being equipped with this Aryan morality, with his Aryan sensory restraint, with his Aryan contentment. He finds a solitary lodging at the root of a tree, in a mountain cave, a charnel ground, a jungle thicket, or on a heap of straw out in the open. And then he practices meditation. And he abandons the 5 hindrances of greed, ill will, the restlessness and worry, sloth and torpor, doubts. He dwells with doubts left behind. And then he gives a nice little simile. Just as a man who had taken a loan to develop his business and whose business had prospered, the man might pay off his old debts. And with what was left over, he could support his wife and family. So that man would think, before this, I developed my business, my borrowing, but now it's been repaid and prospered. And he would rejoice and be glad about that. Or just as a man who was ill, suffering, terribly sick, with no appetite, and weak in the body, but after a time he recovers from that sickness and regains his appetite and strength. And he might think, before this I was ill and now I'm healthy again. And he would rejoice and be glad about that. Or just as a man who had been in prison, and after some time he got freed from those bonds in the prison, he would be very happy about that. Or a man might be a slave. After a long time, maybe he got his freedom from being a slave and could go anywhere he wanted or do what he wanted. And because of that, he would also rejoice and be glad about that. Or just as a man was on a journey with a carts laden with a lot of goods and wealth, might go on a long journey through the desert where food was scarce and danger abounded. And after a time, he would get through that desert and arrive safe and sound at the edge of a village. And so he would be very glad about that he made it through that danger of the desert. So he would be very glad about that. So the Buddha gave these similes just to illustrate. He says, as long, sir, as a monk does not get rid of the 5 hindrances, he feels as if he's in debt or in sickness, in bonds and slavery on a desert journey. But when, through the practice of meditation and the other aspects of his good living, those 5 hindrances disappear from his mind, and he feels as though he were freed from debt, free from sickness, free from bonds. That's how liberating the mind is when it gets liberated from the 5 hindrances. That means from guilt, worry, remorse, fear, greed, hatred, and so on. And because of that, when he sees the 5 hindrances have left him, gladness arises. The body becomes tranquil. And basically, he goes through the description of attaining the first jhana. And so because of all of that, this monk then attains the first jhana. And he says, this, sir, is the fruit of the homeless life, visible here and now, that is more excellent and perfect than the former ones of just having morality and having mindfulness, but actually experiencing the bliss of the first jhana. And I think many of you have heard these descriptions before, but I'm just going to read this one because it's very illustrative of what the feeling of being in the first jhana feels like. So it's just as a skilled bathman or his assistant who needs the soap powder that he sprinkled with water and forms the soap powder into a soft lump, and then puts that soap powder into the water, and that water becomes drenched and saturated and suffused with those soap bubbles, and a person would get down into that up to their chin, and their whole body would be drenched and saturated and suffused with this warm, soap bubble bath. I mean, if you can imagine that, right? And there was no cell of the body to remain untouched by this being permeated and saturated by the warm bubble bath. But that's how the mind feels. So when the mind is in the first jhana, it's drenched and suffused and saturated with the bliss and pleasure that comes from the first jhana. It's an internal experience, mental experience. And that is the fruit of the homeless life. And then he does the same for all the rest of the 4 jhanas. He repeats how each of the successive jhanas is more sublime and peaceful, saying, this is another fruit of the homeless life that is more excellent than the previous ones. And he goes up to the 4th jhana. And then even from there, he goes on to say, with the mind concentrated, purified, cleansed, free from impurities, he directs the mind toward knowing and seeing. And he knows this body is made up of the 4 elements. And this is my consciousness, which is bound to it and dependent on it. So he basically discerns the 5 aggregates. He goes through the insight meditation. So he doesn't just stay there and enjoy the bliss of those jhanas, but he directs his mind toward knowing and seeing. That means through developing insight. And as his mind is thus concentrated, he goes through the description of all the psychic powers, and I'm not going to read them out because it takes too long, but he goes through the description of the psychic powers, being able to create a mind-made body, how he can go through walls and mountains unhindered, like walking through an open doorway. You can pass through solid walls and mountains and so on, fly through the air, and goes through the rest of the psychic powers, remembering the past lives, seeing how the people arise and pass away due to their karma. And then finally he comes to the point of then after developing these psychic powers, then with the mind concentrated and purified, he bends it toward the destruction of the defilements in understanding the 4 noble truths. And he develops that insight into this is suffering, this is the arising of suffering, the cessation of suffering, the path leading to the cessation of suffering, and therefore develops the 4 paths and fruits leading up to final liberation and arahantship. And then he realizes, having attained arahantship, the knowledge arises in him. This is deliverance. And he knows birth is finished. Holy life has been led. Done is what had to be done. There is nothing further to do. And he gives some other similes of that. And so at the end of this, this discourse and mentioning that, and this is the more excellent and the highest. There is no other fruit of the homeless life visible here and now that is more excellent and perfect than this, of that complete liberation from suffering. And that, after he said that, the king, who was listening very intently, he exclaimed, "Excellent, Lord, excellent. It is as if someone were to set up what had been knocked down, or to point out the way to one who had got lost, or to bring an oil lamp into a dark place so that we could see inside the darkness, or the darkness would be dispelled." Just so as the Buddha expounded the Dhamma in so many different ways, and he took refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And then he says this, may the Buddha accept me from this day forth as a lay follower, as long as life lasts. And then he said, transgression overcame me, Lord. Foolish, I was foolish, erring and wicked as I was. And in being wicked like that, I killed my father just to ascend the throne. That good man who was a good and just king, I took his life. May the Buddha accept my confession, my evil deed, that I may restrain myself in the future. And the Buddha, out of a politeness, he said, yes, you did these foolish things, but now you have confessed it, and confessing your wrong deeds, and vowing to do better in the future, I accept that. And then the king says, I'm busy now, and departed. And as soon as the king had left, the Lord said, this is when the Buddha said, the king is done for. His fate is sealed, monks. That means knowing he would have to be reborn in hells for many a long time. But if the king had not deprived his father of life, then just as he had been sitting here, the pure and spotless Dhamma I would have arisen in him. So the Buddha is saying that had the king not killed his father, then he would have attained at least stream entry by hearing that Dhamma talk. But out of his compassion, he knew that, and no, the Buddha couldn't reverse that because of killing a father or mother, one of the heinous crimes. You have to go through the punishment of being reborn in the hells, and there's nothing the Buddha or anybody else could do about that. But anyway, he's saying if he hadn't done that, he would attain at least the Sotapanna, or further than that. And so that is basically the end of the sutta. Now, some of you might be thinking, yeah, okay, well, that's, for monks, the fruit of the homeless life. But, what about us, right? What about us lay people and so on? And we want to practice Dhamma too. And, can there be fruits for lay people? Even if we don't attain those highest results, is there any results visible here and now that, us lay people can practice? And so that's what probably, most of you, could take away from this, is even though, yes, you might, as long as you're, continuing to live as a layperson and you don't have those, the karmic accumulations or whatever, to interest, or a situation where you can renounce the world. Now, I was kind of lucky, I guess, and I had a lot of those opportunities. I took it and went with it, and it worked, but it may not work for everybody, as we know. So, the fact that, especially the 5 precepts, lay people can observe 5 the precepts. Just the fact of if you could practice the Dhamma and observe 5 precepts and practice the meditation to a certain extent where you could at least gain some kind of, even up to maybe even the first jhana. I mean, that is wholly possible, and also deeper insights that can bring some peace and contentment to your life. Then that itself, you can reflect back. Even right now, I know a lot of you out there listening, you've been practicing your meditation now for years, in the Dhamma for years. You've probably, as best as you can, been observing Sila and trying to, downsize your life. And you can reflect back to how it was 10 years, 20 years before that, right? You can see the improvement. So even with that, that is the fruits of a life of Dhamma, call it Dhamma practice, the visible here and now. You're less angry that you were a couple of years ago, or you're not as neurotic, and you're more contentment with less things than you were a couple of years ago, and that itself is a benefit and a fruit of the Dhamma practice, even for lay people. With that, people keep practicing, and it gets it continues to get deeper and deeper, of course, depending on how much time and effort and understanding that you have, that you put into the practice. And so even though you can't live a monastic life, people can lead a lay life, if they're leading it according to the Dhamma as best they can. Maybe not perfect in all of its details, because you have to make compromises if you're married and you have children and so on like that. You have to make some certain amount of compromises, but each person will figure that out for themselves. Each person will take the teachings of the Dhamma, and depending on their life situations, and they can find time for a little bit more meditation, here and there, a little bit more time for perhaps retreats, as you stop, doing a lot of other frivolous things, or so on. There's many ways one can, like practicing downsizing your life, making your life a little bit more simple, and so on. There are so many ways that lay people can do that. So that's what I would like to emphasize as the way to read this sutra, not thinking, oh, this is just from monks, I'm not going to read that sutra. No, each of those things, can be just pared down a little bit, and you can see the benefits of that. Okay, so now I'd like to see if anybody has any questions, maybe anything that we went over in this sutta. I don't see anything that came into the chat box, but if anybody has a question they might like to ask, then go ahead and feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. So this person is having a comment. It says, I am less agitated, less angry, and less attached to the sense pleasures than 30 years ago. So are some of my friends who never practiced meditation. How do I know it? It's because the old age that my mind is not as active as before. Well, sure, a lot of people who maybe don't practice meditation may become less agitated, less angry, less attached to sense pleasures, because it can be a normal part of growing older, but not necessarily. I mean, even some very old people can still get very agitated and angry, and still have hatred and so on, even though they may lose certain sensory desires. But we don't know in their mind. It's the contentment and the ability to sit in meditation and to enjoy this deeper, more profound mental peace, even if it's not even a jhana, even if it's just, momentary concentration or just some level of, mindfulness and concentration, that you can enjoy that mental peace more. So that, in a sense, that somebody who hasn't practiced meditation, they probably wouldn't be able to do that. So, but again, people are different, and our karma is all different, and so we can't judge ourselves in terms of somebody else, what somebody else was experiencing, and they're saying, "Oh, I could, get into all these states and this and that," and but it shows that people are different. Any other questions? Okay, if not, is there one more? Where? How does one know one has attained jhana? It seems unattainable based on the text. Well, don't worry too much about these, attaining the jhana as such and all the things that you might read about the jhana. And there's many degrees, building up to that point of actually reaching a jhana that could be sensed as a jhana. A lot of people mistake, thinking they're in jhana when they might not really fully be in one. But they will have that contentment. You can sense that if you're sitting there and, you're able to sit through lots of pains that you wouldn't have been able to do before, if there's not many thoughts in your mind. You can still have thoughts in a jhana. It's called applied and sustained thought, but it's thinking about the Dhamma, not scatterbrained thoughts and the hindrances. So even with thinking, you can attain the first jhana with applied and sustained thinking. So a lot of people think, "Oh, I couldn't be in jhana, I still have thoughts." Well, that's not necessarily true. If you have the other things, if you have the piti, a lot of very pleasant and peaceful sensations in the body, and the mind is perfectly content, and if you want to sit longer than ordinarily you would be able to, then it may not be technically speaking the jhana, but at least you should be satisfied with, at least you've gotten that far and not so concerned whether it matches or fits some technical description or somebody's description of what the jhana should or shouldn't be. So what is a mind-made body? Well, read the text. I'm not going to describe it. I can't do that myself. So, but it means, basically it would mean like an astral body traveling in astral projection and so on. Well, you in a dream, you're creating a mind-made body, right? You have a dream that you have a body, you're dreaming and you're doing something in a dream, right? So that's a mind-made body. And it feels real while you're in the dream, doesn't it? So that's a mind-made body, a dream. But it may not be exactly what it's talking about if you read the descriptions. That I didn't read that full description, but you can get the sutta and read through it and read what the Buddha was talking about, the mind-made body. Could you explain the connection between the Brahmaviharas and the Jhanas? Well, one can attain jhana through practicing Brahmaviharas. That's true. One can attain the first jhana through practicing, metta and karuna, and even with upekkha, one can attain the fourth jhana because it has equanimity, purified equanimity, which is one of the Brahmaviharas too. So the Brahmaviharas are, if one wants to attain a jhana in them, you start out with the first one, metta, then you go on to karuna, and then mudita, and then finally, if you get to that point, and then the equanimity, and then you're in the third or fourth jhana. So friends, anyway, I don't want to go too much further in this now because we still want to have our meditation practice. So we'll go ahead and take a few minutes break to use the restroom and get a drink of water, prepare for some yoga exercise. We have a little spot there where you can do a few stretches, okay? So we'll come back in a few minutes. Just try to stand straight. Relax your arms at the sides. Gently close your eyes. Just feel your feet pressing the floor. Try to mentally feel the height and the weight of the body over the feet. And then begin some deep, slow breathing, holding the air in the lungs 2 or 3 seconds after breathing in, and on the out breath, try to feel the last bit of air go out of the lungs, thinking like this to yourself. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, standing here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, standing here and now. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. Now we coordinate these movements with that same breathing. So on the next in-breath, raise the arms over the head, interlock the fingers, turn the palms up, straighten the arms, stretch your head back, stretch upwards. Out breath, touch the top of your head. Again, in breath, palms up, straighten the arms, stretch up, bend backwards a little bit. Out breath, touch the head. Third time, hold that upward stretch longer. Bend back a little more. Release the fingers on the out breath, arms back to the sides. Just close the eyes, relax. Just feel the hands and fingers, the increased pulsation in the hands and fingers. Feel where the clothing touches the skin on different places. Just remember standing, present moment of the body. Just let go of your thoughts. Just let your thoughts come and go in the back of the mind. Keep the feeling of the body in the front of the awareness. With the next in-breath, push up on the toes while raising the arms over the head in this way, facing the hands toward each other. Stretch. Out breath. Come back down. Use the breath to help lift up the body. In breath. Stretch. Out. Once more in. Out. Just relax. Gently close the eyes. Feel the increased sensations in the body. increased heartbeat or pulsation, sensations of the clothing touching the skin of the shoulders, the chest or arms. It's present moment awareness. Just remember standing, standing, standing. And next we'll do the side bending using both arms. The in breath, raise both arms up. Keep the fingers in the arms straight, close to your head. On the out breath, bend over the right side. As far as you comfortably can, keep the arms and hands parallel to each other like railroad tracks. In breath, lift up. Then to the other side on the next out breath. In breath up. Again, out breath to the right. Feel the stretch in the side. In. Out. In. Out. In. Out. In breath, lift up. In the out breath, lower the arms. Relax. Just keep the mind in the body, just feeling the increased sensations. Called the sensation body. Just remember the present moment of standing, standing. Just letting go of your thought. You can now spread the feet apart about 3 feet. Wider the better. Hold the arms out to the side. We'll do the twisting from right to left. Children call this the helicopter exercise. So breathe in. On the out breath, twist around to the right. Keep your eyes focused on the hand going back. In breath, come back to the front. Let the feet turn with the body and then go to the other side, out breath. In breath to the front. Just continue that, alternating sides, out breath. In breath, front. Out. In. Once more to each side. In breath. Out. In breath. Lower the arms, relax. Feel each foot pressing the floor. Feel the arms and hands hanging at the sides. Clothing touching the skin. All the different sensations. Feel the head balanced on top, some sensations on your face. And now one last exercise, forward and backward bending, keeping the legs apart. Let the hands touch the front of your legs. And breathe in. On the out breath, bend forward. Keep the head lifted up. Try to flatten the spine. Let the hands come down to the kneecaps, keeping the arms and legs straight. Try to arch the spine downwards. Get the hump out of the spine. In breath, lift up. And the hands under the buttocks for support. Gently let the head go back. Breathe out, bend backwards. Keep the eyes open. Carefully lift up on an in-breath. On the out-breath, let the hands come down below the knees, but still keep the head up. Flatten the spine. Feel the extra stretch in the back of the leg. In-breath, lift up. Once more, the back bend, out-breath. Try to bend back a little more. Be careful. In-breath, lift up. On the third time, let the hands come down as far as you can toward the feet. So try to keep the legs straight. Let the hands, then hold that position longer. Feel the stretch in the hamstring muscles, the back of the legs. Feel the stretch in the spine, the lower spine. And the in-breath, come back up. And one last time, the back bend. Be careful. In-breath up. On the out-breath, just relax the whole body. Just feel each foot pressing the floor. Feel the arms and hands at the sides. Clothing touching the skin. The head balanced on top. Sensations on your face. Feel the eyes and the socket. Just mentally feel that outline of the whole body. Try to feel that subtle aliveness of the whole body. You know, bring the legs back together. And just feel the straight standing body. Okay, let's come back to our seats to get ready for the meditation. Okay, go ahead and get comfortable in the sitting posture. Try to align your head and spine in a straight line. Try to feel that natural inward curve of the lower lumbar spinal column. Just relax the shoulders. Try to keep the chin lifted up, level, parallel to the floor. Just gently close the eyes. Now bring your full attention down to feel the weight of the body pressing the floor. To feel where the buttocks and the feet press the floor underneath. Just kind of imagine that you're looking down through a microscope. Feel the buttocks pressing the floor. Just mentally feel how the legs and knees and feet are bent underneath. Just turn on the video camera of awareness. Just mentally feel the bottom part of the body pressing the floor. Just remind yourself of sitting, sitting. Now feel your hands and fingers where they touch together, where they touch the body. Try to feel the outline of your thumbs or fingers. Feel the subtle pulse of blood in the hands and fingers. Again, just remember sitting, sitting. That's your applied thought, sustained thought, remembering this, feeling the sitting body. And feel the weight of the arms hanging from the shoulders. Feel where the clothing touches the skin of the shoulders, arms, or chest. Now feel the head balanced on top of the neck. Feel your lips touching together. The upper lip touch the lower lip. Feel the sensation of dryness or moistness in the lip. Feel the tongue in the mouth where it may touch your teeth or the insides of the mouth. And now rest the attention behind the eyes. You just feel the eyes in the socket. You feel the eyelids stretched over the eyeballs. Just as though you're kind of just watching the eyes sitting there in your head. Watching them with awareness. Awareness is the third eye. It sees the inner body, it feels the inner body. You might notice some light or color or mental image. Relax the eyes. From that point behind the eyes, open up the awareness to feel the outline of the whole body. Just feeling the general sense of the head on top, the arms at the sides, the legs and feet underneath. Kind of a mental silhouette of the sitting body. Try to hold that outline of the body in the mind's eye. Then begin some deep, slow breathing, as we did in the yoga exercises. Take a couple of seconds to expand the abdomen and chest. Hold the air in the lungs, 2 or 3 seconds. Feel the pulse. And feel the relaxing contractions of the out breath. Feel the last bit of air go out of the lung. Just take a few more deep, slow breaths like that, cultivating this basic mindfulness. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. We're going to count the breaths from 1 to 10 again. I'll do the counting for you. Just keep the mind focused on those expanding and contracting movements. And with the next expanding in-breath, mentally count 1. Feel the brief pause. With the contracting out breath, also count 1. Feel the last bit of air go out of the lung. The next in-breath, 2. Out breath, 2. In, 3. Out, 3. In, 4. Out, 4. In, 5. Out, 5. In, 6. Out, 6. In, 7. Out, 7. In, 8. Out, 8. In, 9. Out, 9. In, 10. Out, 10. Or discontinue the counting. Just let the breathing return to its own shorter, uncontrolled, irregular rhythm. But continue to feel it. Keep looking down the mental microscope. Feel the subtler movements of the abdomen, rib cage, or chest. As the breath goes in and out. Just remember breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. Just simply in, sitting. Out, sitting. Just make that your applied and sustained thought, applied and sustained attention. Try to notice how each breath is different. Sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. Sometimes you feel it in the abdomen, sometimes you feel it in the rib cage or upper chest. It's always changing. Just have the feeling of being a scientist sitting in the laboratory, looking down the microscope to observe some specimen, observe some activity. That's the knowing and seeing. Knowing that you're breathing in, breathing out, seeing the changing. In, sitting. Out, sitting. Breath by breath, moment by moment. Turning up the power of the mental microscope. Notice subtler, finer sensation. Feel sensations of the clothing rubbing against the skin, the stomach, rib cage, chest. It expands and contracts. That's called the breath body. That's occurring in the larger sitting body. And while feeling the sensations of breathing around it, you can feel other sensations of clothing touching the skin and the arms, the shoulder, other sensations in the body that come and go. Or if you can maintain that outline of the sitting body, of feeling the inner body at the same time. It's called contemplating the body in the body. Feeling the breathing body in the larger body. in sitting, out, sitting. So with each out breath, sort of feel body and mind getting more and more relaxed into the present moment. Just letting the thoughts come and go or race here and there in the background. Just keep the attention anchored in the breathing body in the front of the mind. In sitting, out, sitting. The mind becomes a little drowsy or sleepy, then go back to take some deep, slow breaths. Or if there's too many thoughts, you can try counting the breaths from 1 to 10 again by yourself. Stay more concentrated. Stay awake, alert, keep reconnecting to the breathing body. In sitting, out, out, sitting, breath by breath, moment by moment. The mind is calm enough, just opening up to the flow of impermanence, to notice more and more sensations, or thoughts coming and going, in and around the breathing body. Be aware of the painful sensations pulling at the mind, relaxing around the painful sensation, seeing them vibrate, change, diminish, disappear. Cultivate that knowing and seeing. Knowing and seeing this body-mind process, these five aggregates, the process of impermanence, going on under their own power, the power of past conditioning. Be aware of any thoughts of I, me, or mine. Breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. Sensations come and go. Pleasure and pain come and go. Sounds come and go. Perceptions and thoughts come and go. Ideas of I, me, and mine come and go. These are all just a continuous flow of the impermanent world, body-mind phenomenon, through the space of awareness, body-centered awareness. This breathing body is the natural connection to the present moment, the natural present moment awareness. It's the original pure vibration of the consciousness. If we lose that connection to the breathing body, and the mind gets easily pulled here and there by the hindrances, neurotic thoughts, worry, fear, anxiety. So always just keep coming back to reground, reconnect to the breathing body, whether you're sitting, standing, walking, moving, lying down. This breathing body is the natural resting place, home for this consciousness. Being grounded in the present moment, centered in the body, developing mindfulness and awareness. This is the results, the fruit of the meditative life. Whether you're a monk or a lay person. Yo cha vasatatam jive dusilo asamahito ekaham jivitang seyo silavantas jaino. Better than living for 100 years indisciplined and with a muddled mind, is living but a single day, well disciplined and meditating. Thus spoke the Buddha. Now I invite you to join in chanting the word sadhu 3 times slowly. Sadhu. 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 Now mindfully place the hands at the edge of the knees. Take one more deep breath. As you breathe in, stretch the head back. Pull against the knees, arch the lower spine. And lift the head up on an in-breath. On the out-breath, press the chin to the top of the chest to stretch the neck vertebra. Lift the chin up level on an in-breath. Relax on the out-breath, put a smile on your face. Okay, friends, so comes to the end of our evening Dhamma sharing and meditation. And again, if you had any few moments of some calmness, or mental contentedness, good awareness, or concentration, some pleasant feeling in the body or mind, content with the present moment. That is the fruit of the meditative life. Actually, the word homeless life, there's 2 meanings of that. One, of course, maybe like monks or nuns who left their home and families. But another meaning, again, that's the outer homeless. The inner homeless means the mind that's not mentally attached to so many things. The mind that's not dwelling in the past or the future so much. Even the mind that's not so obsessed with itself or I, me, and mine. So that's another meaning of trying to be homeless. So even though you might be living in a house somewhere, mentally you could be homeless, at least if you're not too attached to the things in the house and so on. Anyway, these are all things that, as you continue to meditate, you will understand the meanings of that. and also the meanings of that verse that I just recited about living for 100 years without discipline or with a muddled mind, living but a one day, disciplined in body and mind, and then meditating with awareness. So again, that is the fruit of practicing meditation. Okay, friends, so keep up, try to do your M&Ms every day. If you can't do the longer meditations, at least, try to make more use of the M&Ms. And perhaps I'm this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, I'll be giving a Zoom retreat sponsored by the Pittsburgh Buddhist Society. And I've sent that link out. Also, the link is on our website. So starting Saturday morning, you can log in, or I think you can, click that link that I sent out on the website or in our weekly mailing for the Pittsburgh Buddhist Center, and then you can sign up for that retreat through them. And they have the schedule. They will have the schedule of the timings of the talks and meditations and practice going on Saturday and Sunday. Okay, so join if you can. See you back next week. I haven't decided on what sutta I'm going to talk about next week, but I'll send that out again. Okay, so all the best. Namo Buddhaya.